Jeff has always been into motorbikes. When he was younger, he spent a lot of time in the garage with his dad, learning about engines and riding. This passion grew into a hobby, connecting him with friends who shared his love for biking. They formed a club, not for the sake of it, but for the joy of riding together. Now he's in his mid and his 40s, Jeff found comfort and belonging in these gatherings, which provided a much-needed escape from his turbulent life. His dedication to work had strained his personal life, leading to a painful divorce and a distant relationship with his son. Seeking a new beginning, he moved to Cornwall hoping to rebuild his life. The club became his sanctuary, a place to forget his troubles and enjoy friendship and the open road. On September 19, 1998, the club's annual barbecue was in full swing with food and drinks flowing freely. More than a dozen motorbikes were parked among the dunes. This gathering marked the end of the season for the club. Jeff was a tall, broad-shouldered guy who was part of a knitting group of friends. The man with the full beard noticed her as she stood out in a long denim skirt, thick sweater, and overcoat on this unusually warm evening. While others wore swimsuits, Jeff approached her and invited her to join their group. He recognized the signs of distress in her unkempt hair and sleepless eyes, a look he knew well. She declined. Jeff moved further down the beach. Back with his friends, Jeff faced teasing, especially from Lenny, who joked about his interest in her. Lenny, a stockbroker by day and a biker by night, was Jeff's friend and financial advisor. He put an arm around Jeff and said, "She's not your." The problem was that he couldn't leave the party. Despite enjoying the festivities, Jeff kept an eye on the woman. When the party broke up and the last bike left, Jeff went through the dunes to where the woman sat. She appeared to be waiting for something. As the tide retreated, she walked towards the water. Jeff sensed her intention and ran after her, removing his clothes. The water was up to her knees when he reached her, but she ignored him as the waves crashed on her thighs. Jeff swam towards her and grabbed her waist, startling her and causing her to scream and struggle. "You do this," Jeff shouted over the waves. "Leave me alone. I want to die." "If we go further, we'll both drown," she replied. "Is that what you want?" When she came out of the water, she looked into his eyes, tears streaming down her face. She was sobbing deeply. Jeff hugged her and they stood in the surf, battling the waves. Then he led her back to the dry sand, picking up his scattered clothes. He knew he couldn't leave her there and had to get her away from the beach. He lifted the soaked coat from her shoulders. Her shoulders. "I think this coat is ruined. The skirt might be salvageable, but the sweater is done for. You should change out of them before you get too cold. Put on jeans and a sweatshirt. I have a jacket in the pickup I can wear over my swimsuit." The woman looked at Jeff expectantly as she reached to unfasten her skirt. "Turn around, please," she said. Jeff apologized and turned his back, hoping she wouldn't run back to the sea. "It's okay, you can look now." He turned and burst out laughing. The jeans were too long and she had to hold the waistband to keep them up. The sweatshirt sleeves covered her hands. "Sorry for laughing, but that outfit fits where it touches. Let me roll the legs. Up there, we've got some rope in the pickup that we can use as a belt." Jeff knelt and rolled up the jeans until Helen wasn't standing on them. When he stood up, he smiled at her. "You've managed to get into my jeans. I think I deserve to know your name." "It's Helen Mallister," she replied. "Nice to meet you, Helen. I'm Jeff Cockburn. Let's find you. Let's get you out of these jeans and off this beach before it gets cold," Jeff said. They walked to the pickup, and Jeff found a rope and threaded it through the jeans, pulling it tight around her waist. They got into the truck, and Jeff turned it around. "Why are you doing this?" Helen asked. "Because I want to, and because I owe someone," Jeff said. Jeff saw something in the moonlight, a tall, athletic woman in a white swimsuit. She pushed her dark hair back as she strode out of the surf. Jeff reached out and shook Helen's leg. "Do you see that?" he asked. "See what I see, waves and sand," Helen replied. Jeff looked again, but there was nothing. He shook his head. Are you all right? He asked. Right, Helen asked, sounding concerned. I'm fine, he replied, snapping back to reality. Let's get you some fish and chips. Jeff drove to Pato, glancing at Helen occasionally to gauge her state of mind. He hoped that showing her kindness was the right thing to do. What do you mean you owe someone? Helen questioned. Someone did something. I can't pay them back, so I'm paying it forward. Ask me about it later, Jeff said. Where are we going for fish and chips? Helen asked. They continued in silence until Jeff parked, jumped out, opened Helen's door, and guided her to the shop. I thought you said fish and chips. This looks like a fancy restaurant, Helen said, confused. It's just. Jeff explained that the restaurant was across town. The man behind the counter greeted Jeff. Jeff said, I thought you said fish and chips. The man behind the counter said, I know, but we're closed. Jeff looked around the empty shop. The man behind the counter said, Brian, I can see your rust off your feet. Can you put some chips on a plate for the lady and a chip buddy for me? I'll even do the washing up. Jeff said with a grin. Brian laughed. You do the washing up? That'll be the day. Do you want any drinks? Jeff went to the toilet and came back to find the food on the table. Helen's eyes looked different, less dead, she thought. She noted that Brian's Amati was a frustrated biker. Jeff said the waitress spoke highly of you. Helen mentioned which waitress it was. The restaurant is closed. Jeff said, puzzled. The one who wiped the table's tall Jeff looked around the empty restaurant. Point her out to me, he requested. She's gone, Helen replied. You were the nicest man she knew, she added. Jeff shook his head. The restaurant closed half an hour ago, and all the staff have gone home, he explained. I know what I saw and heard. She said good things about you. Helen affirmed. No doubt your description just sounds like someone I used to know, but it couldn't be her. Jeff said, shaking his head. Jeff nodded towards her plate. Eat up and tell me what you think, he suggested. Jeff glanced at Helen, asleep beside him in the truck. She enjoyed her meal but couldn't finish it. By the time he parked in his driveway and turned off the engine, she was exhausted. He gently closed the truck door, opened his front door, then returned for Helen. He took her to the guest bedroom, removed the rope belt, his jeans, and the sweatshirt, despite her objections. She was a bit disheveled, but he thought she was beautiful. He covered her with a duvet and whispered, "Sweet dreams, fair princess," before leaving the room. Jeff locked up the truck and settled down with a glass of wine, wondering what had put Helen in such a state. He guessed it wasn't about money, judging by her expensive clothes. He thought back to memories of his ex. Jeff's wife Jackie briefly came to mind, but he pushed her out of his mind and focused on Helen instead. He set her clothes to wash and went to bed, thinking about the day's events. Just after midnight, Helen appeared in Jeff's bedroom doorway. "I'm sorry. I just wanted to check it wasn't a dream," she said. "You sleep?" "I woke up somewhere strange and panicked." "Did you undress me?" Helen asked. "Yes, but I left your underwear on." "Your skirt is in the wash." Jeff said Helen took a shirt and went to the bathroom. Jeff heard the shower running and then felt the bed move as she climbed in. "Would you hold me?" "I really need someone to hold me," she said, sobbing. When she calmed down, they both drifted off to sleep. Jeff woke up alone, showered, and went to the kitchen, where he found Helen making coffee and toast. Breakfast, but he didn't know what she liked. "Do you have an iron?" "My skirt is full of creases," Helen said. Jeff got the iron and ironing board, egg and bacon, and put them on the table. "Okay for you?" he asked. She nodded as they ate. Helen looked into Jeff's eyes a lot, seeing both kindness and sadness. He tried to get her to open up. "So, do you want to tell me what led up to last night?" he asked. "I don't want to burden you with my problems." "I've done more than enough," Helen replied. "You can leave if you want, but it might be difficult in just your skirt and underwear. I'll drive you wherever you need to go, Jeff said. He noticed a gold wedding band on her left hand, topped with a diamond ring. I see you're married. Do you want to call your husband and tell him where you are? He held her face to his waist and asked gently, what happened? I don't have a husband anymore. HEK is divorcing me. Helen sobbed, so Jeff took her hands and waited for her to stop crying. Is that why you went to the beach last night? He asked. Partly. I'm usually the one people depend on. It depends. I used to lead a team of accountants helping clients with tax plans, but now I can't even handle my own life. Helen said that's not silly. Divorce is as stressful as losing a loved one. Jeff reassured her there were no signs. We were married for 10 years and trying to start a family 3 weeks ago. Jeff, she told me he loved someone else and moved out. That was 3 weeks ago. What happened since then? I saw him with her on Friday at Mothercare. She's pregnant. She's giving him the baby. I couldn't believe it. I felt worthless and unloved. I ended up here without thinking. Jeff asked softly, his voice trembling. I don't know. I don't think so. She squeezed Jeff's hands. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't be here. I owe it to both of us to make the best of it. I should talk to Angie. Jeff suggested I lost my purse last night. Everything was in it, my ID, credit cards, and cash. Helen said, does a motorcycle mechanic make enough to loan me some money? She asked with a weak smile. I'm not a mechanic. I own the dealership. Don't worry about the money. Who is Angie? Jeff explained that the blonde girl at the party is a top solicitor. She can help you with the divorce, even if you don't want it. She can make sure you don't lose out. Jeff said, is there anything you haven't thought of? Helen asked, half joking, yes, how I'll ever wear that shirt again without seeing. You're in it now. Go dry your hair, pick a clean shirt, and we'll go to End for clothes and shoes. Jeff said with a smile. Helen almost smiled as she went to get dressed. Nookie wasn't ideal for shopping on a Sunday, but they managed to find enough for a few days as they drove. Helen observed Jeff more closely. He had a dark beard and gray hair, which made her think he was about 45. He had a strong, tanned physique, which showed he spent a lot of time outside. She remembered feeling safe in his arms. What had possessed her to climb into his bed? She felt relief when he turned away, letting her snuggle against his back by 2 p.m. They'd bought her clothes and shoes. They sat at a cafe drinking coffee and making plans. Jeff called Angie and arranged to visit after a light lunch. He gave her a tour of the area. Helen noted Jeff's confidence and the respect he received. She wondered why a man with so much going for him was alone and sad at Angie's. Jeff left Helen with her while he and John, after an hour, Angie's husband, talked bikes over beers. On the drive back, Helen, looking tearful, asked to go home. Jeff decided to ask about her meeting with Angie. How did it go with Angie? She said, I can't stop the divorce, so I need the best settlement. Jeff asked, what did she say? She said she suggested trying IVF with a new partner and using the settlement for that. I realized that it wasn't my fault my husband didn't leave me because I couldn't have children. He found that out after he started cheating. Helen replied. Helen then started to delve deeper. Helen asked how she got that nickname. It happened at the St. Paul's Carnival in Bristol. It's a big event that draws a lot of people, but the National Front held a rally on the same day. There was some trouble. Jeff began, you were involved. Helen replied, not really. I don't look for trouble, but I can't ignore certain things. A young kid about 17 was. I was attacked by some National Front skinheads. The police at the station did nothing, so I rode my bike straight at them. They scattered, but one came back with a knife. I knocked him out with my helmet. My lawyer friend, Angie, sorted it out with the police. The guy I knocked out was a repeat offender. Jeff recounted. Well, why? Helen pressed. Jeff smiled. The kid I helped. Wellard, you said? Wellard stuck, and my biker friend started calling me that. He explained, so you're not just my hero, you're everyone's knight in shining armor. Helen remarked, I'm just trying to do the right thing. Jeff said modestly, I'm glad you do. Whatever led me to your beach? Did me a huge favor? Helen said, leaning on his shoulder. Can I cook for you tonight? Jeff agreed, you tonight, of course, if that's what you want. She got excited, feeling his muscles as she squeezed his arm. As she cooked, she kept glancing at Jeff, feeling drawn to him. She wanted him, but wasn't sure how to make a move. She thought about the previous night, when he'd done nothing. Maybe he doesn't fancy me. She decided to take a chance and make herself. Jeff was feeling vulnerable for the first time in 2 years. He'd eaten a meal at home that he hadn't cooked himself. He couldn't take his eyes off Helen as she moved around the kitchen. He admired her trim waist and remembered the sight of her lying on the bed when they'd finished eating. She made him coffee and then kissed him on the lips. Jeff responded by pulling her onto his lap. They kissed passionately. Helen pulled away to catch her breath. Well, that answers one question, she said, with a hint of teasing in her voice. Who said I wasn't? No one, Jeff replied, surprised. People say what a lovely man you are, yet there's no woman in your life. I just wondered, Helen explained. Are you happy now you know I'm straight? Mercy, last night, but I didn't try to seduce you. Maybe you think I don't find you attractive. Jeff said. Helen shook her head. No, I don't think that. I'm just glad to know you, she said softly, resting her head on his shoulder. If I'd taken advantage of you last night, I'd have lost your respect. I turned away so you wouldn't notice what was happening to me. As for not finding you attractive, I think I've just shown that I do. Her heart raced. She wanted him but wondered if she should make the first move. She loved his gentlemanly nature but feared it might hold him back. She decided to act. I'm glad it makes this easier. You've been so good to me and I need to ask another favor. Would you mind making love to me, please? She looked down, her red hair falling across her face. Jeff could hardly believe it. It had been almost 2 years since he'd been with anyone. He thought about it and realized she was grateful to him. He struggled to respond. His face was red. Helen, I appreciate the offer, but making love is important to me. I don't want to do it out of obligation or gratitude. It has to be because we care for each other. Helen was silent for a moment. I should feel insulted, but I don't. I'm not offering my body as a thank you. I'm asking because you're the most wonderful man I've ever met. My head is a mess, but this isn't gratitude. I want you. If you didn't care, you'd have left me to the police or a hospital, so I'll ask again. Jeff, please take me upstairs and make love to me. Helen took his hand and they went upstairs to his bedroom. They stood by the bed and Jeff kissed her. She looked into his eyes. I've never kissed a man with a beard before. It feels soft and tickles my nose. Helen giggled, and Jeff pulled her close. Their kissing intensified, and they made love. If I can stay here, you might not have to wait long, Helen said. She lay close to him, and Jeff put his arm around her. I could lie like this forever, she said softly. You can stay as long as you want, Jeff replied, kissing her. I think I should take a shower, he said. Is there room for two? She asked playfully, and they went back to bed, snuggled up and fell asleep. Helen woke up looking at Jeff with love in her eyes. Jeff was woken in a way he'd never experienced. Oh, you're awake. I thought I'd have to start the party on my own. Wow, you were right. It was better, she said, kissing him. You were so good to me. I don't deserve this. You think it's one, Helen said. Jeff, you gave me the best night of my life. Jeff replied, Helen, you deserve all I can give you and more. Without the right ID, which was in her lost purse, Jeff told her it was no problem, but she felt the need for independence. I need to go home, she said. I've canceled my cards, but replacements will be sent to my home. My passport is there too. Once I have it, I can prove who I am and access my money. Jeff saw the sadness in her eyes as she continued, "Can you do me a favor? And buy me a train ticket back to Radlett. I'll repay you as soon as I access my bank accounts." "The money isn't important," she said. "Helen, I don't want you to leave. I enjoy having you here." Jeff said, his voice filled with emotion, "I love being here. Honestly, I think I'm falling for you. But I need to take control of my life. There's so much to do, get my finances in order, deal with my possessions and clothes. Douglas has moved out, so I'm selling the house," she said. "You understand. Jeff, I have a new life ahead of me, hopefully with you, but I need to wrap up my old life first. This isn't the end, Jeff. It's more like the beginning. If you want it to be, you know what I want. If getting you back means I lose you for a while, then that's what I must do." Jeff said with a heavy heart that night. They were together again, and it was even better than before. The next morning, Jeff drove her to the station, feeling the weight of her imminent departure. They arrived just as the London train left, with an hour to wait for the next one. They settled in the station cafe. "Jeff, when I asked why you helped me, you said you owed someone. It didn't seem like money could be the answer. Could you tell me what you owe and to whom?" Helen asked, her curiosity getting the better of her. "Her name is Vanessa Richardson, and I owe her my life. It's nothing special, just something I can't repay." Jeff replied, looking down. "You can't leave it at that. We have time. Tell me the story," Helen urged. "Are you sure? It's quite a long story, and it might not be to everyone's taste." Jeff warned, "Just tell me." Helen insisted, leaning closer. Jeff took a deep breath and began, "Okay, the story starts 2 years ago. I founded a software company called Cockburn Software Solutions, CSS. I left college and started the company right away. It took off because everyone was buying PCs, and Windows made them. We made it easier to use. We developed commercial software like Office suites and accounting packages. We did well and floated the company on the stock market, keeping 60% of the shares, which gave my wife Jackie and me control. We also gained a business partner with management expertise. Things were good for a while, but demand for our software declined. Even Microsoft was developing hardware. I knew we couldn't rely on our current model forever, so I explored new revenue streams. We focused on bespoke software for businesses and developing digital TV boxes. My partner Simon opposed these ideas, but with 60% of the shares, Jackie and I had the final say. I traveled around the country, securing contracts for bespoke software, and I neglected my family. I was focused on the company's growth, and I could have sold the company for a lot of money, but I felt responsible for my employees, and I wanted to build something for my son. I realized I wasn't giving my family the attention they deserved. Then I landed our biggest deal, a contract to develop firmware for digital TV set-top boxes. It secured our future, and I was over the moon. I planned to make it up to Jackie with a holiday. When I got home, I was surprised to see Simon's car inside. There was Jackie, Simon, and my 17-year-old. A year later, my old son, Hun, was on the sofa waiting for me. I excitedly told them the news, but no one reacted. Eventually, Simon said, "Let's talk about it." Jeff was confused, so I sat down with him. He explained that the company had shut down the development section and laid off the staff. He said that the company can't afford it, so we're sticking to what we know. I demanded that Jackie and I have a controlling interest. I said that I'm the CEO, and Jackie's the COO. Simon and I had an emergency shareholders meeting yesterday and voted you off the board. We're profitable without financing your projects, and this has nothing to do with you sleeping with my wife. The hand movement suggested more than business. This is business. I'm grateful to Jackie for her support. Jackie added that he was right. Your spending was out of control, and we had to stop you before you ruined the company. Simon, you've stolen my company, slept with my wife, and now you expect to remain friends? Have you ever known me at all? I hope you'll change your mind once you've called Cal down. We still have our son to think about. We should try to get along. I'll be leaving with Simon tonight. Maybe you'll reconsider when we're gone. Half an hour before I was on top of the world. Now it's falling apart. My 17-year-old a year. My old son sat there silent. Ewan, what's your part in this? I didn't go to sixth form. Simon paid the fees because you wouldn't. It's the easy route to top universities, so you're selling me out for 2 years' school fees and a new car. I put my hand to my forehead. God, where did I go wrong with you? Simon and Jackie stood up. Simon turned to me. Jeff, I know this is a lot to take in. We should leave you alone for a while. He offered his right hand, but maybe he forgot I was left. I handed Jeff the business, nothing personal. I grabbed his hand and punched him with my other one, knocking him to the floor. You've stolen my company and my family, so of course it's personal now. Get out of my house. I looked at Jackie. Are you planning to marry him? Yes, as soon as the divorce is final. Remember, when a man marries his mistress, it creates a vacancy. What do you mean? I'm sure you'll figure it out. Maybe Simon will help you. Jackie helped Simon up, and they walked out. I followed, closing the door silently. I felt empty. My life had revolved around my wife and the company since university. Later, my son became important in less than an hour. It was all gone. On TV. People in my position reach for a bottle. I never understood that. I drink when I'm happy. I certainly wasn't. I sat trying to decide what to do, but no answers came. I wandered the house trying to find something to feel happy about. It got dark, then light again, but it meant nothing. I heard the phone. I heard a phone ring, but I ignored it. I remembered holidays in Cornwall with my parents. They were both dead, but I felt a pull towards the happiness of those times. I knew I had to go there. I walked out of the house and ended up on the beach where I used to play as a child and where I met you. I didn't know why I was there. It didn't make me happy, it just made me miss my parents more. The tide was going out, and I walked into the ocean. It seemed fitting to end my empty life in a place full of happy memories. I walked further and suddenly she was there, standing in the sea. She was about 5 feet 10 inches with long dark hair and a white swimsuit. She looked at me and said, "This is not the way, Jeff. Let's go back." Why? What's the point? There's no reason to go back. There's always a reason to live. There are things you have to do, people you have to meet. What are you talking about? How do you know my name? I'm talking about you. It's not your time. If you go further, I'll have to save you. Turn around and come. She offered me her hand and said, "Come with me, Jeff." Who are you? Do I know you? My name is Vanessa. No, you don't know me, but I know you. Please come with me. I took her hand and followed her. She walked out of the water gracefully. She was about 35. She led me to a house in the dunes. It was an old colonial-style bungalow. She took me inside, let go of my hand, and disappeared for a few minutes. When she returned, she handed me a towel and directed me to the bathroom for a shower. She was still in a daydream. I slowly made my way to the bathroom, where I was surprised to find her helping me out of my clothes and into the shower. I just stood under the water, not moving, as she joined me and washed my hair and hugged me as she washed my back. "You look like you haven't slept in days," she said, as she led me to the bedroom. "Let's deal with that first." Still unclothed, she put me to bed. I woke up gently. It was dark outside, and Jackie's arm was around me. I thought it was all a terrible dream. I turned to Jackie and ran my hand up her body, but something felt wrong. I reached for the bedside lamp, but it wasn't there. I panicked, asking, "What's going on? Jack, where are we?" The light came on, and I saw it wasn't Jackie, it was Vanessa. Everything came flooding back. Oh, God, was it a dream? Vanessa took my chin in her hand and kissed me. No, Jeff, she said. It wasn't a dream. It all happened, but it doesn't have to be as bad as you think. Look at me, Jeff. Don't you like what you see? You're beautiful. Any man would be lucky to wake up with you, but you're not the woman I love. Are you still in love with her? I don't know anymore. She doesn't love me. Don't be too hard on her or yourself. Jeff, you know why he seduced her. The question is, do you want her back? I don't think so. She chose Simon over me. I'd always feel second best. She kissed me. Never think of yourself as second best. Jeff, now are you going to use this weapon, or do I have to wait another day? What do you mean another day? It's 2 a.m. You've been sleeping for 30 hours straight. I'm a normal woman with normal needs, and it's been a long time for me. When I share a bed with a hot man, I get excited. Vanessa pulled me closer and kissed me deeply. I'm sorry, Vanessa. Can we take it slower? I'm not sure I can handle this yet. She smiled and kissed my forehead, so that's not a no, just a not now. I needed to use the bathroom when I returned to bed. Vanessa was asleep, or at least pretending to be. I got into bed and spooned her. I slept fitfully and woke up at 7 a.m. I woke up to the smell of coffee and saw Vanessa at the end of the passage in a short silk robe. She'd brought 2 cups of coffee to the bedroom. Jeff hesitated, unsure how much to tell her. His mind wandered back to memories of Vanessa. She put his coffee on the nightstand and kissed him. Well, that was a pleasant surprise, she whispered. Your wife was. Lucky for her, she still thinks she is with a new lover. Jeff, it's her loss. How can you say that? I hardly know you. He lay down beside her. She stroked his face. That's what you do for someone you hardly know. I can only imagine what it's like for someone you care for. Take my word, it's her loss. Now, how about breakfast and then a swim? Jeff was nudged back to the present by Helen. Yes, I made. I loved her for nearly 6 weeks. We went to the beach, swam, worked on our tans, and spent nights making love. Sometimes it even happened in the middle of the day. In the evenings, we talked. I told her how empty I felt, having built a company and made money, but losing my family and the company. Vanessa wouldn't hear of it. She listed my achievements and the people who benefited from my efforts. Her desire for me boosted my self-esteem. I developed feelings for her, but she said a relationship was impossible. As the days shortened, she said she had to leave soon. The night before she left, we talked. She said I needed to go back and reclaim my life. You're not the kind of man who gives up. You came here because you weren't in. You're right. You can take your life in a new direction. That night, we made love tenderly. The next day, she drove me to the station in her white Audi Quattro, an amazing car. We said our goodbyes. How will I know when you're back? I asked. Look for me on the beach. If I come back, that's where I'll be. Vanessa is the person you owe, and I guess indirectly I owe her my life too. If it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have been on that beach, and if I hadn't been there, I wouldn't have recognized the look in your eyes. Jeff replied. Let me do it because you owe Vanessa. Helen said that wasn't entirely true. I could never have let you do it. I know things are never that bad. I had to make you see that. Jeff took a deep breath, preparing to share his story. This is where things get strange. I realized something was off on the train ride home. I bought a newspaper to catch up on the 6 weeks I'd been away with no radio, TV, or papers. I was shocked to see that the stories from the day my life fell apart were still in the news. The newspaper said only 10 days had passed. I was convinced it was an old paper, so I went to find the newspaper seller. He insisted it was the current issue and pointed out the date. I checked my train ticket and The date on my ticket was the same as the one in the paper, and I was pretty embarrassed and confused. I went back to my seat, and when the conductor came by, he confirmed the date on my ticket. I tried to accept it and continue with the crossword, but I got home mid-afternoon to find my answering machine flashing. The first few messages were trivial, and then my secretary left a message asking me to call her urgently, even giving her home number. Then Jackie's worried voice pleaded for me to pick up my solicitor, who left a message saying we needed to talk more. My secretary left a few more messages, expressing her concern for my well-being. Jackie left another message saying she still loved me and needed to know I was safe. It was painful to hear, but I knew I wouldn't call her back. I called my solicitor, Stuart McKenzie, who'd been with my company from the start. He confirmed that Jackie and a man named Hamilton had tried to access company files, claiming I was no longer CEO. I blocked him until I heard from him. Stuart also froze my bank accounts to protect my assets. I told him everything was true and arranged to meet him the next day to sign papers and discuss my options. I called Janet, my loyal secretary. She was relieved to hear from me and explained how she wanted to quit but stayed because she needed the salary. I told her she did the right thing and we arranged to have lunch the next day. I promised to help her find a new job, and I even decided to give her my car that night. I slept well for the first time since everything happened. The next day I met Stuart, signed the necessary papers, and lifted the freeze on my accounts. He recommended a divorce lawyer to protect. We came up with a plan for my assets. He said he'd take care of everything. I had lunch with Janet, who was pretty emotional. I gave her job leads and handed over my car keys at the bank. I transferred half of the joint account to my personal account and gave up my card for the joint account. I arranged for a charity to pick up the furniture from the house and listed it. I got a hotel room with an estate agent. I bought a mobile phone and took a taxi to a hotel. The answering machine had another message from Jackie. She was begging me to talk to her and admitting she made a mistake. I knew talking to her wouldn't help, so I ignored the call. A few days later, I found a furnished flat in Uki. Stuart found a broker to sell my shares in the company. Gradually, Simon wanted to buy them, but I was set on selling at market value in Uki. I spent my time looking for Vanessa. I visited the beach daily, but never saw her. I found the remains of the house where we stayed. I learned from a local that it had burned down a year ago. The local newspaper confirmed that Vanessa and her husband. I found out that Vanessa and her husband had lived there, but he had killed himself and Vanessa had disappeared. I realized that Vanessa wasn't coming back and that there was no way I could have a relationship with her. I kept going back to the beach, feeling drawn to it. In the end, I bought a house and an ailing motorcycle dealership nearby, and I indulged a passion from my youth. I spent a lot of my free time on that beach waiting for Vanessa, even though I knew she wouldn't be coming back, Jeff explained. Helen squeezed his arm. "Did you ever see her again?" she asked. "No, not until the night I met you," I thought. I saw her coming out of the surf just as we were about to leave the beach. It was only for a second, then she was gone. Jeff replied, "Were you in love with her?" "Jeff," Helen inquired. "No, I don't think so," she replied. "I liked her a lot and she was very beautiful, but I felt I owed her something. She gave me so much in those 6 weeks or 10 days, whichever it was. I'd have done anything to give something back to her." Jeff said, his voice tinged with nostalgia. "Do you have her photo?" Helen asked. Jeff took out his wallet and showed the picture he got from the newspaper office. Helen looked at it and her face went pale. "I've seen her, Jeff. I've seen her twice. She was the waitress in the fish and chip shop. I met her again when you took me clothes shopping. She was in the fitting rooms and told me what a good man you were." Helen's voice trembled as she spoke. "Do you think she's looking after us?" "Well, if she brought you to me, I need to thank her again," Helen said softly. "Maybe she didn't bring me to you, but she made sure you were there for me." Jeff suggested the public address announce Helen's train. They walked to the platform and kissed like teenagers. "Helen, are you really coming back?" Jeff asked, holding her close. You bet I am. I have to sort everything. I don't know how long it will take, but I'll be back as soon as it's done. Helen promised. What about you, Jeff? You're not going to disappear like Vanessa did, are you? Ellen asked, her eyes searching his. No, I'll be here. I'll wait as long as it takes. Jeff assured her, kissing her again as she got on the train. A tear came to his eye as the doors closed and the train pulled away. The train started to move, and Jeff waved until he couldn't see her anymore. He then returned to his car and drove to work on August 2, 2003. Jeff was in his element. He turned off the hose and admired his pride and joy, the Vincent black shadow, which gleamed in the sunlight. Jeff started drying the paint and chrome work with a chamois and leather. He noticed a taxi pull up, but he didn't look up. Oh, he knew who it was going to be. She'd been asking about him in Uki. She stopped on the other side of the bike and waited for him to get up. Jeff carried on polishing it. It had been a long time, Jeff. You're looking good. She'd put on about 20 pounds, and even her face looked a bit puffy. You're not looking so bad yourself, Jack, Jeff replied, his tone neutral. I know how I look, Jack said, her voice carrying a hint of resignation. So what brings you here? The divorce settlement wasn't good enough. I gave you $250,000 from the house. You kept your company. Stuart McKenzie said you were happy with the lump sum for Ian's child support. No, it's nothing like that. You were very fair. Let's go inside for the first time since she arrived. He noticed she was carrying a briefcase. He invited her inside. She looked around. This is nice, Jeff said. I see you've got a big garden. I thought you said you only had 3 bedrooms, but it looks like you've got 4. What do you want, Jeff? I've come to ask you to come back. Jeff, wait a minute. I want to know what you want. I've come to ask you to come back. Jeff, stop. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to shock you. I laughed. I didn't mean that. I'm not asking you to come back to me, though I would if I thought it would work. I'd even beg, but I know I burned my bridges with those divorce papers. It wasn't until I lost you that I realized what I really wanted. You know the saying, you don't miss your water until your well runs dry. You lost me as soon as I figured out you'd been seeing Simon. You acted like a couple on that sofa. That was enough for me. How is Ian? I hear he's married now. I tried to stop him, Jeff. I really did, but he's an adult now. If he wants to change his name, I can't stop him. Jack looked up to Simon. Give him time, she said, her voice filled with frustration. He's still young. Jeff replied calmly, he's had 7 years. I think that's long enough. Jack countered, what about you? I gather it didn't work out with Simon. Jeff asked gently, do you remember what you said to me as we went out the door? Jack asked, her voice trembling slightly, I do. And it came back to haunt me when a man marries his mistress. It creates a vacancy. It was heavy with irony. It only took him a year to fill that vacancy. It didn't help that I was still in love with you. You never asked me why I did it. I've asked myself several times, and I still don't know. He was just so damn persuasive. The silver tongue doesn't cut it once you're spending all your time together. Once I caught him cheating, it was over. Jack confessed, bitterness seeping into her voice. So what's happening now? Have you found someone else? Jeff asked, curious. Jack told Jeff that she'd been with a couple of guys over the last 5 years, but they didn't last. Jeff said that he'd always been a good husband. He was a fool to believe that Jack was cheating on him. Jack said that she regretted it, and you could hear the sadness in her voice. She said that she'd never done that, and that he was all she wanted. Jeff said that he knew that now, but it was too late. Realization, it's way too late for that, so this visit isn't about us. What is it about? Jeff asked, steering the conversation back to the present. We want you to come back. We can offer you your old job back, and you'll have a free hand. You can take the company in any direction you want. Jack explained, You keep saying we. Who is we? We need to put together an amazing diversification plan. We've tried, but the clients don't believe we have the expertise to deliver. We need someone with credibility. Jeff, we need you. Jack pleaded. What does Simon have to say about this? Jeff asked, his brow furrowing. He's okay with it, but it wouldn't matter if he wasn't. He still only has 30% thanks to the divorce settlement. I have 35%. The rest of the board and the bank support me. I even brought a contract. Jack said. Pulling a document from her bag, Jackie handed it to Jeff. He poured the coffee and brought 2 cups to the table. He took a sip and dressed Jackie. What makes you think I want to come back? I'm happy here. I have friends here and I don't need to come back. Come on, Jeff. You can't be happy running a motorbike shop. It allows you to indulge your passion, but it can't stimulate your brain. A slim redhead got out of the car, opened the back door, and helped 2 children out. They walked towards the front door. Jeff got up and walked towards the door. Are you expecting visitors? Jackie asked. No, Jeff replied, as he opened the door. 2 children ran in and grabbed his legs. Daddy, why didn't you come swimming with us today? The little boy asked. Jeff squatted down to talk to him. Because I was expecting a visitor who came all the way from London, he explained. Jeff asked the little girl, Is she here now? Yes, darling, she replied. She's sitting over there at the table. Jeff stood up and hugged the young woman, kissing her. Jackie felt a twinge of jealousy seeing them together. We missed you at the pool today, Helen said, putting her arm around his waist. Are you going to introduce us? They walked back to the table as Jackie offered her hand. Jeff made the introductions. Jackie, this is Helen. Helen, this is my ex-wife. Jackie, this is Daniel and Vanessa, my ex-wife and her kids. Daniel, this is Jackie, my ex-wife. Helen, this is Vanessa, my ex-wife. Vanessa, this is Jackie, my ex-wife. Jackie, this is Vanessa, my ex-wife. Helen, this is Jackie, my ex-wife. Jackie, this is Helen, my ex-wife. Helen, this is Jackie, my ex-wife. Jackie, this is Helen, my ex-wife. Helen, this is Jackie, my ex-wife. Jackie, this is Helen, my ex-wife. Helen, this is Jackie, my ex-wife. Jackie, this is Helen, my ex-wife. Helen, this is Jackie, my ex-wife. Jackie, this is Helen, my ex-wife. Helen, this is Jackie, my ex-wife. Jackie, this is Helen, my ex-wife. Helen, this is Jackie, my ex-wife. Jackie, this is Helen, my ex-wife. Helen, this is Jackie, my ex-wife. Jackie, this is Helen, you're doing a great job, but you didn't mention you were married. Jackie responded, with a hint of sarcasm in her voice. Once bitten, twice shy, Helen replied, lightly. Jackie said she wanted me to come back, but I told her I couldn't. I guess you could say I'm kind of stuck here now. Helen called from the laundry room. She said the company is in trouble. Jeff, we've been made an offer, but it's all or nothing. I only own 35% of the shares. Simon has 30% and the other 35% belongs to 4 shareholders. They all want to sell, even Simon. The bank wants us to sell to settle our overdraft. I really did come to ask you to come back. If you do, I can get the others to back me, and the bank will give us more time. Jackie explained desperation in her voice. Sell. Jackie, just let it go. Get the best deal you can. Jeff advised, I don't want to. That company is my last link to our old life. Jeff, I don't want to. Jackie pleaded, let it go. Take the offer. Jack, let the past go. Jeff repeated, trying to convince her, they won't take on our debts. I'll be left with less than $100,000. Simon's out of luck. He remortgaged his house to buy some of your shares, but then lost them to me in the divorce settlement. Jeff, we need your help to rebuild the company. You've done it before. If we let you do it your way, we wouldn't be in this mess. You can't be happy just riding motorcycles. Dealer, you're capable of so much more. Jackie implored, her eyes filling with tears. Take the offer, Jack. I'm happy here. I like what I do. Yes, I'm capable of more than selling motorbikes. That's why I have my finger in so many other pies. Just go home. Take the money and move on. Helen came back into the room. Jackie, I'm just about to start lunch. Would you like to join us? I'm sure Jeff would be happy to drive you back to town later. Jackie looked at Jeff and realized she was wasting her time. No thank you, I must be going. Thanks for your time, Jeff. She took out her phone and called for a taxi. If Jackie had left, Helen would have walked up to Jeff, put her arms around his neck and kissed him. You are a very, very naughty man, she said. I don't know if she knows, Jeff. Are you right on both counts? I don't think I can tell her, he replied, grinning. The last time I found something that amusing was when my my husband's baby came out brown, of course. You getting me pregnant made it all the more enjoyable. Like you said, I'm a very naughty man. On September 29, 2003, some employees of Cockburn Software Solutions noticed the bearded guy at the back of the lunchroom looked familiar. But they were more interested in the slim redhead, looking elegantly hot in her two-piece suit. Helen waited for everyone to assemble and closed the door. Ladies and gentlemen, you know CSS has been experiencing financial difficulties. I'm pleased to announce that as of 9:00 a.m., the uncertainty is gone. Wellard Data Services has taken over this company. Whispers spread through the room. Wellard was built over the last 6 years to meet the need for online data storage that our founders saw coming. We own 2 large server farms, one in Reading and one in Edinburgh. Much of our business comes from if you're looking to make your data completely disaster-proof, we've acquired CSS to add value by providing online bespoke programs. This won't yield immediate profits, so we need to release assets tied up in this company. To that end, we are selling this building and relocating to Truro. Excuse me, sir? You are Ian Hamilton, project manager, right? And there's no way you're moving us to the back of Beyond. I'll take it to the board if I have to. Jeff stood up. What code do you write, Mr. Hamilton? I can't make any promises on your behalf, Mr. Hamilton. As for taking it to the board, well, I own Wellard and now I own CSS again. I'm on the board, Mr. Hamilton, so what I say goes. I say we move to Truro. We'll get enough from the sale of the London properties to pay salaries until we develop new products. If you visit Human Resources at the end of this meeting, they'll tell you. Ian now knew who he was dealing with and left the room. Jeff continued, if anyone else feels the same as my son, you're welcome to join him. We hope to take most of you with us, but that's up to you. We'll offer a generous relocation package, as Miss McAllister mentioned. This building will be sold along with the 2 companies. The flats occupied by young Mr. Hamilton and another young lady are going to be managed by our own team. You've met Miss McAllister, our chief accountant. Some of you who've been with CSS for 7 years or more will recognize the returning staff. Mr. Simon Hamilton and Mr. Cockburn no longer have roles here. I'll meet with all department heads this afternoon too. If you have any questions about the way forward, just ask. Miss McAllister will be happy to answer them. Jeff left the room and found Simon Hamilton in what had been his office. Good morning, Simon. I'm packing up. Well, I wasn't, but if you want this office, I'll move. Nice beard, Jeff. If you hadn't spoken, I wouldn't have recognized you. Simon replied, yes, I'd like you. Jeff said firmly, Janet, you need to vacate the office and the premises. Janet, Jeff's old secretary, handed Simon a box for his belongings. I remortgaged it to buy some of your shares. Simon sounded frustrated. I wouldn't worry, Simon said. You'll get another job soon. Maybe my son will share his redundancy pay with you since you shared your name with him. Jeff said sarcastically, You haven't fired him, have you? I can't believe you'd be that vindictive, Simon replied, shocked. I didn't have to, Jeff said. He fired himself, saying he wouldn't go to Truro. Jeff waited while Simon packed his things. He moved towards the door. This is all strictly business, nothing personal, Simon said, considering shaking Jeff's offered hand, but remembering the broken nose from last time, he decided against it and left. Jeff sat at his old desk, running his hands over the leather top. Janet knocked and entered. It's so good to see you back where you belong, she said warmly. Thank you, Jeff replied. It's good to have you back, was his last employer's sad response. Jeff asked, They offered a generous raise, but I knew who I wanted to work for, she replied. I'm glad you're with us in Truro. Is it okay with your husband? Oh yes, sir. We plan to retire in Cornwall now we're empty nesters. There's nothing keeping us here. Janet, don't you think you've known me long enough to call me Jeff? Jeff, I couldn't do that. Mr. Cockburn, it wouldn't be right. Is there anything you need? Morning, Jeff said, Yes, sir, thank you, and Janet returned moments later. Miss McAllister is here to see you, sir, she announced. Send her in, Jeff instructed. Then go to lunch, he added. Jackie was right about one thing, that woman's sweet on you. She's a great secretary, Jeff teased. That's what matters, Jeff replied. I suppose this makes you my boss now. I have a fantasy about my boss where I make a mistake and he punishes me for it. Helen said playfully, How does he punish you? Jeff asked, amused. I'd leave that to him, sir. Sorry, sir. I'll try to do better, but I have to be punished, don't I? Indeed you do, Jeff said, slapping the other cheek with a smile. Whatever you say, sir. You're the boss, Helen replied, enjoying the game. Miss McAllister, I hope you've. Jeff said, continuing the role play, Oh, I have. What have you learned, then? Helen replied, leaning in closer. That I'd better make more of them, she said. What would your husband say about that? Jeff asked. I don't have a husband, Helen replied. My partner was too damaged by his ex. Helen replied, Why don't you marry me? Jeff suddenly proposed, What about my children? Helen asked, I'll adopt them. Jeff pulled her close and said, The answer is yes. Other than that, wasn't it her? Jeff? Helen asked, her eyes wide with wonder. He nodded. You saw her too, right? She was real. I didn't dream her. If she wasn't real, we both had the same dream, right? I think she was saying goodbye. Maybe she thinks we don't need her anymore. Helen suggested. Now I'll have to be your guardian angel, Jeff said, pulling her closer. Only if you'll let me be yours for the rest of our lives, Helen replied, her voice soft and full of love. It's a deal, Jeff said, as they locked lips in a passionate kiss.